Hey everyone, we are going to try something a little bit different this week on Highest and Best. My guest today is myself, where I will go over our reactions for Prop 5 and Prop 10, and we will also talk about a study by Rent Cafe about rental accessibility in San Francisco. So Marc, how are you today? I'm feeling good. Thanks for having me on. I'm a big fan of your podcast and glad I could finally be a guest. Great, let's get into it first. What has your attention right now? Well, obviously the midterm elections. That's what's been going on lately, and it just happened, and just really tracking the propositions is really what I've been paying attention to. Of course, another thing that has my attention is Prop 10 not passing. Yeah, that is something that we have talked a lot about on the podcast. We have given it a ton of coverage. Okay, so Prop 10 did not pass, so there will be no expansion of rent control in California. But now, what is next for California housing crisis? Is this something that can be solved with a different proposition or simply more development? The issue, I think, simply comes down to supply and demand. There are so many people moving into California, and there simply is not enough housing supply to keep up, driving up rental prices. So yeah, I would say more development is what's needed. The question really though is, where do you build? Newly elected Governor Gavin Newsom says he wants to build 500,000 units per year. So that would certainly help the supply and demand. But that is a good point. Where's it going to be is an interesting question. Sure, you could build out and say Antioch or Livermore or maybe some places like Vacaville, Fairfield, but if you're working in San Francisco, you're looking at an hour or two commute every day. The realization that us as a society is coming to is in these big metropolitan areas is that we will need to build up rather than finding where. And what a lot of people in the Bay Area might not know is that zoning really isn't the issue. It's the NIMBYs, the not in my backyard people, who don't want that to happen. It's always the same story. We need housing, just not near me, so something will have to give. What are a few cities you think might be the first to take the steps to start building up rather than out? Well, obviously San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, Berkeley, the big cities around here, they should be the first ones to continue to build up. Outside of those, it's hard to say because you would have to look at the demand of people to live in those cities. For now, the best move would be for the smaller cities to remove zoning restrictions, so when the demand to live there spikes, they'll be ready to add more housing units. And more housing means more accessibility, which, as the Rent Cafe study shows, isn't as big of an issue as we thought in San Francisco. But those numbers can be misleading. However, they're another form of measurement that we do need to track. How so? Well, the tech industry has had a lot of influence in the local economy boom. Because you have all this money coming in and techies are spending it everywhere, you're going to see higher prices in retail in other places. Then they're going to spend their extra money, and soon you see the snowball effect of where you get these higher prices because most of them can afford it. I agree. I think this type of measurement showcases why prices are so high. The simple reason being that people can afford these high prices, and San Francisco had the number 2 highest rental affordability for the Rent Cafe study. This goes back to my argument that median income has increased over the last 20 years when you analyze disposable income. Many studies will look at adjusted gross income, but there are a lot of flaws in those calculations, and when you look at that graph, the median housing income really hasn't increased much over the last 20 years. So the key then is to look at disposable income, which is what the Rent Cafe study did. Rent prices simply don't go up just because. There are usually market factors to consider, and this study shows why. And the study does mention rent control, but there really is nothing to show there is an effect. I mean, look at Los Angeles. They had among the lowest accessibility, and they also have rent control. It really comes down to the local economy, and San Francisco's economy has been much friendlier to renters. So with Prop 10 not passing, what happens next? Well, everything stays status quo, where San Francisco will remain one of the highest affordability cities rental-wise, and Los Angeles will remain one of the lowest affordability and accessible at 23% accessibility. It's also worth noting that Oakland was also in the top 10 for the most accessible, coming in at number 9. So you can probably say it's more the local economies than rent control or anything like that. The unfortunate part of the news is if your household income has not kept up, then that's where you're going to see families struggling. So is the tech industry pricing everyone out? I don't think so. They may have started it, but they don't have enough boom to make that big of a change. Another part of what I mentioned earlier is that a lot of industries are feeling the boom because of all the money the tech industry is putting into the economy. With that said, what struggling families need is a boost in housing and urban development funding to provide funds through Section 8 that can assist in housing affordability. So that allows us to segue into our next topic, and that is Governor Newsom's plan to build 500,000 units per year. The good news is that many of the people recently elected yesterday are pro-housing and want to work together to build more housing in California, and Newsom looks primed to lead that. 500,000 units per year is very aggressive and most likely won't happen, but if we hit 200,000 per year, that would still be 4 times more than what we're developing now. And with more supply, it makes it easier to have more low income and Section 8 housing, which would be a huge deal for low income families. And I would also throw in that if we're able to accomplish anywhere near 500,000 units per year, we would be completely caught up to demand in 6 or 7 years, which would cause less demand for available housing, and essentially property owners would have to lower their prices to accomplish their goals, which in turn makes California more affordable. Simply put, it's supply and demand, and not passing Prop 10 allows the market to heal the natural way. Now, were you surprised that Prop 5 did not pass? This is going to be a tough one. I was in favor of this passing because it would have helped our seniors, plus added more inventory to the housing market. It's estimated to add another 45,000 transactions per year to California. This proposition would have combined Prop 1690. Why was that a big deal? When I started real estate in 2003, the average homeowner moved every 4 to 6 years. Today it's 14 and a half years. But with 70% of seniors, they have not sold their home in an average of 27 years. This is in part of them not wanting to give up their Prop 13 taxes. Prop 5 would have allowed them to move anywhere in the state of California and keep their Prop 13 taxes. What was the biggest realization for you during the campaign process for Prop 5? As a realtor, I was really pushing for this, and there have been plenty of podcast episodes where I discuss the benefits. But the biggest realization I came to is how many people, including homeowners, do not further support Prop 13. Prop 13 is like rent control for your taxes. There are plenty of studies that do show how Prop 13 has hurt California infrastructure with reduced tax revenue, and it seems like support to repeal Prop 13 is picking up. What's your biggest realization? Probably the same as yours. But the problem with getting rid of Prop 13 is that the cost of home ownership will rise, making housing less affordable. But if we truly build enough housing to catch up with demand, affordability increases, then the idea of getting rid of Prop 13 is more palatable, because if the supply and demand level out, housing prices will become more affordable and the tax increases of property value will be much more manageable overall. Do you think the California Association of Realtors is pleased with how these propositions turned out? There's definitely excitement over Prop 10 not passing, but definitely some disappointment with Prop 5 because that was CAR's sponsored bill. Is there one result that they might have wanted more? No, I think it's pretty equal on both sides. Prop 10 would have been bad for cities looking to put in rent control, but yes on 5 was CAR's baby. So it was a win and a loss for the California Association of Realtors last night. Okay, last question before we wrap things up. Prop 7, did you vote yes or no on it? I voted yes. There's no reason for us to continue doing daylight savings time. I agree. Of course, this yes vote is just the beginning. This enables California to switch to federal time if they are offered it. Then once that happens, we then go to the ballot to actually implement it. And I'm sure California will be offered it. Several states have already been offered already, and I'm sure California will get the offer soon. Which is good, because I really don't like it super dark at 4:30 in the afternoon. Well, Mark, thanks for taking the time to come onto the podcast and chat with me. My pleasure, Mark. I had a good time. I'm a big fan of the podcast, and I'm glad I could finally come onto the show. So thanks for having me, and let's do it again sometime soon. Sure. You know how to get a hold of me. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you to our producer, Sam Lubman. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share the podcast. Remember, you can listen to the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Google Play, SoundCloud, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. For more information on my business as a property manager and real estate team, go visit my website at markguzman.com. I really want to thank all of you for listening. It means the world to me, and I hope today's episode provides you value in your day-to-day life. I created this podcast to help showcase the many great people that live in this world and help share some knowledge that I've learned along the way in life. Again, thank you for listening. Check out our sponsors, and I'll catch you on the next episode.